Welcome into the Door Report. It is episode 187. It is a Monday night, October 24th, 2022. We are powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors, family owned and operated for more than 2 decades. Alaco Fine Wood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. Since 1995, Jimmy Alaco and his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals who share the founder's passion for quality craftsmanship and customer satisfaction. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue in Will's making me laugh in Berry Hill, or call them at 615-356-0303, or log on to their website at alacofinewoodfloors.com. Alaco Fine Wood Floors, serving Middle Tennessee's hardwood flooring needs since 1995. Oh man.
Hell yeah.
Where do we start, Will? Where do we start? Oh man. I think there's some people out there that are confused as to how we still keep coming on here recapping games the past few years. But you know what? We just got that dog in us.
We are like Rocky Balboa in Rocky 4 when he's fighting Ivan Drago. And Drago's in the corner with his trainer, and all of Russia is behind Ivan, and the fate of the United States rests on Rocky Balboa's shoulders. And Ivan Drago looks at his trainer and he says, "He's like a piece of iron." That's us. That's the Door Report. We just keep coming back. Vanderbilt football is doing everything they can to break us down, break our hearts. The SEC referees and officiating crew, they're in on it. They are in on the beat down of our fans' souls. So you told me to keep it short, Billy. So I'm trying to get out some longer rants here at the beginning in the more cut and dry time space when you can cut that down. So I know we have limited time.
I got to get to your rants, Will. I know there's quite a few of them today. But we will recap that Mizzou game. We'll get to our 3 main takeaways. And I want to talk a little bit, Will, about, I know there's certainly several things to fix, but kind of hinting or like pinpointing key things to fix heading into the bye week. And then we got 2 weeks to prepare for South Carolina, a game that is winnable. And we've talked about it being winnable. And I think it is still. Now, South Carolina looks good. They look better, but that A&M team is reeling. So I don't know. Yes, you give South Carolina credit, and we'll talk all about that South Carolina game here in a couple weeks. But Will, before we get to the Mizzou preview, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, everybody, at Door_Report, and Instagram, Door.Report. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcast. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. All right, let's get to the Mizzou recap. All right, Will. Mizzou defeats Vanderbilt 17-14. The Tigers improved to 3-4 on the season, 1-3 in the SEC. They get their first SEC win. Vanderbilt, the SEC losing streak moves to 25 games. They are now 3-5 overall, 0-4 in the SEC. Well, it's hard to lose a game when you force 4 turnovers. But you look at the offensive output for Vanderbilt, it's understandable when you struggle as much as Vandy did on offense. It's a bad day to have one of the worst offensive showings of the season. I know 242 passing yards isn't terrible, but it's also not particularly good. And you only rush for 57.
It's also a little skewed on one play that was a 6-yard curl route and a hell of a play by Gamarion Carter.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. 80 yards of that 242-yard output came from that one play, and it was a hell of a play. But, Will, onto the game itself, what an ugly slugfest this was. I mean, this is exactly what everyone expected when Mizzou and Vandy got together this season. I mean, this is Mizzou and Vandy. These are the 2 words.
Well, Billy, you would say that that's what everyone expected, but it's not what everyone predicted. No. This is not a shot at you. It's just everyone, the over-under, the Vegas. I predicted, and I was incorrect, the Vanderbilt win. But the flow of the game, I was right. And the final score almost set up to be exactly what I predicted. I think it was 24-20 was the prediction.
Yeah.
And it was pretty close on the defensive side. But man, I mean, I do think that the expectations of this game, the over-under would put you in the mindset that I think Vanderbilt's over on points was 18.5 and Missouri was like 31.5. So this was a pretty low scoring game compared to what the odds and I think a lot of people expected going in. Once you got into it, you started seeing Missouri Vandy. We all knew this was going to be an ugly, low scoring game. I'm like, no, you didn't. But I just had to throw that in here.
Well, Mike Wright entered the game for AJ Swann, which I don't know that we expected, but he played AJ Swann. He played his first freshman performance of the season. And I know you tweeted about that. AJ Swann looks like a freshman for the first time this season. And that's actually pretty impressive to say that. I mean, how many games has he started now and contributed to this offense? Coach Lee did confirm that Swann was injured. He didn't comment on the extent of the injury. I've heard rumors of a concussion. Nothing really publicly confirmed yet. I'm sure Coach Lee will talk about that tomorrow. But it doesn't seem like, I mean, it doesn't feel, I don't get the feeling that Swann's done for the year or anything like that. I mean, we haven't heard anything, but I didn't see the injury. Did you, Will? I didn't see a particular hit. I didn't realize Mike Wright was even in the game until the play after he even started in there. I was like, oh, Mike Wright's in the game. So, obviously AJ Swann struggled. The entire offense struggled. The offensive line didn't get any push. But initial kind of reaction to what you saw from Swann and then, the injury, because like I said, I didn't see the injury, but I think it is a good sign that, we don't get the feeling. I've heard rumors, nothing confirmed, but I don't get the feeling. I think you'd agree that Swann could be done for the year or anything like that.
Well, there's two things this could be. You've heard the concussion, you've heard all of that, and they don't have to release anything in college. So we may never know. And he may just come out and be perfectly healthy after this bye week and heading into the South Carolina game and be fine. So there's two ways this Swann thing. One side is he actually did have a concussion. It was missed. They missed it. There was one hit. I think it was the first drive of the game, actually, but it was definitely the first or second drive. He took a really big shot on a throw, and it was an incompletion, and they showed the replay, and he got up and he kind of jogged over, and it looked like he was fine, but he definitely felt the hit. It could be that play, and they just didn't see it. They didn't want to bring him out and draw attention to the fact that they had missed a concussion and he had played a whole half with a missed or undiagnosed concussion. Then there's the more likely side. I don't think there's an injury. I think he played like shit. I think that he was locked in on Will Sheppard. And I think that Coach Lee wants to save face, basically, on that issue and save his confidence. He mentioned something interesting in the post-game presser about Swann's confidence level in this game, and that his confidence level was not where the staff had seen it in previous games. And that is what really made me say that's the most likely scenario, because he's very non-specific with the injury. You've heard nothing. The rumors of the concussion just seems to be the most likely.
I mean, there was nothing about the likely
scenario is he took a big hit. It kind of rattled him. He wasn't playing well. And you have an experienced guy sitting there with Mike Wright, and without hurting the pride of Swann, and maybe he is a freshman. He's 18, 19. Maybe he was in a really bad mental place, and you never know. So we don't know. I don't know, but it's one of those two things. Either they missed a concussion early or an injury early, and they didn't want to basically trot him out, have the sideline reporter ask, and then be like, yeah, we missed a concussion in the first drive of the game, and he's been playing pretty woozy. Or it's the other side. So that's pretty much what I see, Billy. I don't know if you see a third or fourth option there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's either one of those two things, and it could be a combination. I mean, maybe AJ Swann is a little banged up after playing Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, and now Missouri, a really good defensive line, and he has taken some shots. We've talked about the shots he's taken, and in this game, the concussion per se could be a combination of plays within the game. So, I don't have a hunch here, but my thing, I'm leaning more towards your second take there, Will, in that save face. He didn't play well. But maybe he's a little banged up. So that was kind of the easy answer there post game for Clark Lee. We'll get to a lot of this game. One more thing Coach Lee said after the game, he said it was a give all the way on that last play, and that the O-line simply didn't get enough push. So that was not, they have read plays for Mike Wright. That was a handoff all the way. If you haven't been getting push all day, and I want to get to this because I don't get to it a whole lot later. I was confused as to why you decide to go shotgun. And I know we both agree on this. And Mike Wright, say you put him under center, you put a couple guys behind to get an extra push. I didn't understand that. We will get to that though. But Will, an underrated element of getting to 4th and inches, the throw to Ben Bresnahan was a low throw by Mike Wright. Ben he had to go to the ground to catch it. If that throws a foot higher, that's easily a Vandy first down. We're not even talking about this. So I think that's something we've kind of glossed over. And I talked about that in the moment. I looked over and said to my buddy, I said, if that's a foot higher, that's an extra 3 yards, and we're not even talking about it. So I wanted to get that out there, Will, and I know you have a take on that as we will. But let's go ahead and dive in. Our 3 main takeaways of this game, and there's not too much of a stat report to get to, any ancillary things. We're getting right to it. We're getting right to the beef of the podcast. 3 main takeaways. Number 1 for me, Will. It's funny. This was my number 1 key to victory for Vanderbilt. Cash in on opportunities. Vandy did not cash in on opportunities. That's my number 1 takeaway of this game. 2 missed field goals from Bulovas. The missed 27-yarder was brutal. Vanderbilt had a good opening drive, Will, and then Bulovas misses a 45-yarder. I know the wind was in play. It looked and quite frankly sounded awful. I mean, I feel like I could hear the wind gusts in that game. The announcers were hinting at it as well. Well, but for the 27-yarder, there's no excuses for that. Maybe you throw wind in there, but it's a 27-yarder, and in that point in the game.
Just to be completely fair to Bulovas, he's missed some this year. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt takes here, but the Missouri kicker did also miss a kick inside of 30 yards as well. And he's also, I know he did that against Auburn, but the reason that was so wild in the Auburn game is he doesn't do that. He doesn't miss kicks. Like, he's a very, very good kicker from Missouri, and he did the same thing.
Right. Yeah. We love.
I'm not defending missed kicks, but
no, This is nothing against Bulovas, but at least hit one of them. Missing 2 of them was just kind of compounded that. The Anthony Orji interception early in the game, and that put Vanderbilt in plus territory with a good amount of momentum. I mean, defensively, you get an interception like that to essentially start the game, but they went backwards on offense, and that was the story of the game for Vanderbilt. So that was one opportunity missed. Another opportunity missed was the Langston Patterson recovered fumble on the kickoff right after the CJ Taylor scored the defensive touchdown. It was freakish. Still couldn't reach the end zone there. And that, of course, was the missed field goal, the 27-yarder from Bulovas. Well, Mizzou had 4 turnovers. 4 turnovers. I mean, it's almost like they wanted Vanderbilt to win this game. They said, it's like the Mizzou sports talk radio host. It's almost like Brady Cook and the Mizzou team and special teams thought the same exact thing. I mean, 4 turnovers. Vandy's defense, well, they played their tails off in the second half, but the offense, they didn't hold up their end of the bargain. That's the bottom line. I know Harrison Mevis missed a field goal late in the 4th quarter. That's another chance that Mizzou sort of is gifting you momentum in this game. And man, Mizzou played awful offensively, and really, you could argue defensively in the second half, but Vanderbilt played just as bad offensively. Their defense played the best of the season. I mean, that defensive effort, I'll get to it, a little bit later here, Will, but the main thing for me and the main takeaway is missed opportunities. And maybe I'm missing some. I think you'll probably jump in here with other missed opportunities, but those are the chunk of the missed opportunities for Vanderbilt. And that's why, well, I said, if they take advantage of their opportunities, they're going to win this game. They're winning this game if you take advantage of those opportunities. And we said going into the game, Brady Cook's going to throw interceptions. Mizzou's going to fumble the football. Maybe they fumble a kickoff or 2. So we knew this was going to happen. We knew Mizzou was going to give Vanderbilt opportunities and turn the ball over. And we said, I said this too, if Vanderbilt doesn't take advantage of them, they'll be in trouble. And they were in trouble. So I just went back to my first key to victory for Vandy, Will. I mean, they didn't cash in on opportunities. So that, to me, there's a whole lot more I'm going to get to, and I don't want to get to it all in this first main takeaway, but you didn't take advantage of opportunities. And maybe you cut that in half. Maybe you take advantage of 2 of those 4 opportunities that I mentioned, and maybe it's a different story. Maybe you head into overtime. Maybe you win the game. So there's just so many of those to point to in this game where you say, man, if Bulovas hits that kick, maybe we go to OT, and maybe, if you find a way to punch it in at least once when you have it, in plus territory, maybe you do win this game. So, those have to just kill Clark Lee and the coaching staff and the players. Everybody involved. They're feeling worse than we are, and all the fans are. So Didn't cash in on opportunities, Will. That's my number one. I couldn't put anything else above it. That's my number one opportunity, as vague as it is.
Yeah, I know what my three keys and key takeaways are, but the ranking of these is not significant. So I have no idea what order to put these in because they are all so broad. But I like that you did the opportunities thing because it felt like Missouri was trying to give Vanderbilt this game. Every single chance that they felt like they were dead in the water, Vanderbilt wasn't going to be able to come back, that there was just no momentum whatsoever. Missouri would find a way to give Vanderbilt life and bring them back into the game. So that was definitely one of your keys. I think my third key, or in my prediction, I said something about the defense looking a lot better in the upcoming games, and I feel pretty at least justified on that one, even though I get put in the box of shame for the incorrect win pick. But my key number one is going to be in defense of the coaches and offensive play calling before in one of my key two or three, I rip into them. And that is going to be the lack of vertical offensive playmakers. And this is one of my major frustrations with football fans in general, is all teams are not created equal. All players are not created equal. You can't scheme the same way with the wide receivers that even Vanderbilt has this season versus 5 years ago when they had even, or I guess that was more than 5 years ago at this point, 10 years ago, when they had Jordan Matthews, Chris Boyd, Jonathan Krause. This offense would look a lot different under Joey Lynch with different players. He is scheming based on his personnel. Right. And right now, it is apparent from how Missouri has played, how Georgia played, SEC defenses are scared of one guy beating them vertically, and that is Will Sheppard. If he is not on the field, or if no one else can step up on the other side, or in any other facet of this offense, vertically stretching the defense, you are going to continue to see single high safety, stacked boxes, and Will Sheppard with bracketed coverage. You're just going to see it over and over. He's going to be double teamed. People are going to be saying they just keep throwing the ball to Will Sheppard and he's not catching any of his targets. Well, he's being double teamed and no one else is getting open against single coverage. And that just is what it is. These quarterbacks are not getting opportunities to throw the ball downfield because teams know they are not willing to press up against one-on-one coverage with Gamarion Carter. Great play by Gamarion Carter on that curl route. SEC teams are still not scared of him one-on-one with just a corner and no safety help, beating them deep and making a play on the ball. They're just not. They're not scared of McGowan doing it consistently. They're not scared of Quincy Skinner Jr. doing it consistently. It's one thing to take shots to these guys. And I think Swann actually completed one to Skinner Jr. early in the game in kind of a miraculous fashion. But it's one thing taking the shots, but they've only completed 1, 2 to anyone down the field more than 15 yards that wasn't named Will Sheppard. And until they can do that and get more talent at the skill positions, more explosive talent, guys that can make explosive plays. Gamarion Carter is a good example of a guy that should be the number 4 receiver. He should have the ability to bust a curl route up for 80 yards against an SEC defense. That's awesome. That's a building block. But he's not your number 2. And that's the main issue, is this offensive staff from Vanderbilt is completely hamstrung because SEC defenses are making them prove that they have the talent on the outside to beat them deep and beat them vertically. And right now, Vanderbilt's guys just aren't doing that. And that is limiting what they are able to do everywhere. In the run game, in the screen game, they're just not scared of that. So before I rip into the staff, I have to get that out as number one. Is right now, remember the talent level that this team had last year. It is improving, but it is still not anywhere close to where it needs to be. And you're seeing flashes of young guys step into those spots, whether they're freshmen or sophomores. So this game hurts right now. You see flashes, but the overall talent level just isn't there right now to win games at all in SEC play and even consistently in out-of-conference play. Hopefully in the upcoming seasons, we'll see it. But, man, this was a real reality check as to where this team sits because Missouri did everything they could. So the talent gap at the skill positions will be my key number one.
Yeah, and that was a fear we talked about, Will. I mean, early in the season when they, you get to 3 wins against NIU, there was always a but. There was a but. SEC play is looming, even if it's Mizzou, even if it's South Carolina, and you don't get that extra SEC win. let's not sit here and be stunned, and I think that's something that Vandy fans are forgetting about. I think but it's slowly coming back to realization. And so that was the fear coming into this week. But, well, I'm totally with you there. My number two key takeaway here is this game was not won and lost on the final play. We all harp on that final play, that the 4th and inches for Vanderbilt, that Ray Davis up the middle, not able to get it. But that was not where the game was won and lost. Of course, Vandy's only bright spot offensively was really the 80-yard touchdown from Gamarion Carter. I mean, you look at that, that's the only bright spot. I mean, you take away that 80-yard touchdown, you're under 200 yards passing for the game, and you've got already under 100 yards rushing, 57 yards rushing. So offensively, they just didn't get it done. And that's what you look at. I mean, in this game, even if Vandy gets the 4th and inches, it's not like, people are talking about in that 4th and inches call, oh, if we get that, we win the game. No, you're still not guaranteed a win, even if you get that. Bulovas had already missed 2 kicks, and Mizzou's defense was dominating the game up front. So I don't know how many more yards Vandy is even able to gain if they get that after that. And then Bulovas has already missed 2. So you put him up there to try to attempt a 30-yarder. I mean, how much confidence do you have in that? This game was won and lost on Vanderbilt's offense and their inability to move the football consistently. You're not going to, like you said, Will, you're not going to win not just many games. You're not going to beat anybody in the SEC rushing for 57 yards. That's the bottom line. I mean, that's Vanderbilt's, quote unquote identity. If it is that, when you don't do that, you put yourself so far behind, no matter who you're playing in the SEC. And Will, they were also 7 of 19 on 3rd downs. A lot of 3rd down opportunities where Vanderbilt just squandered it. I mean, you have that many opportunities, 7 of 19, and you fail. Vandy also, Will, they're growing up a freshman quarterback. I mean, let's realize that as well. In the first half, he really, played awful. I mean, we've said that. And when you're playing SEC defenses, that comes to light. I mean, you saw the win against Northern Illinois. But him struggling, I'm not saying this is exactly what I expected, but I'm not surprised that we saw this type of, performance from AJ Swann. But this really first bad performance we can say that he had. So, but that means guys around him have to step up. So it makes the guys around him have to elevate their level of play. When they don't, Vanderbilt has a bad offense. I mean, let's face it. I know you're facing a Missouri defense, but against SEC competition, this is not a good offense right now. And you're not going to beat SEC teams playing that style of football, banging your head against the wall, trying to run the football. And then you have one guy on the outside, and then you insert Mike Wright in the game, and, it's just things get skewed. So I want to put that out there, Will. I don't know how many people think this. I know we both, agree with this. This game was not won and lost on the final play. Yeah, it was a huge play in the game, and it definitely had an impact on the final score. Maybe Vandy puts it into overtime with a tying kick. Maybe they win it. Maybe they do, but we didn't see that opportunity because they didn't get it. But it was not won and lost on this final play. There were so many other things that happened, missed opportunities, bad offense for Vanderbilt, an injury to your starting freshman quarterback. It just felt like a big snowball effect. So, well, this game was not won and lost on that one play, and I'm going to get to positives. And my negatives, I'm not getting to too many negatives because we've talked about a lot of these already. We've had the Alabama game to talk about them. We had the Georgia game to talk about them. We had the Ole Miss game to talk about them. Yeah, I think some new ones kind of, reared their ugly head in terms of a lack of playmakers offensively, like you just talked about. But let's stop it with the, freaking out about the last play. Yeah, I'll freak out about it. I didn't think Vandy should have been in the shotgun. But I mean, say you're under center and you don't get it. What are we going to say? I mean, well, if it goes the other way,
you would have gotten it.
I mean, we don't know
that. You do. Statistically, if you're within a certain margin, I think it's within half a yard. The quarterback sneak is the closest thing to a 100% probability of getting half a yard that exists within all of football.
But we just don't know that because we didn't see it happen. So I know, say it. There's I wish we could have seen Mike Wright under center. I really do. I really do wish. But it didn't happen. And so Vanderbilt, ended up losing the game. But this was not won and lost in the final play. I wanted to get to that. But a lot of what Vanderbilt did in this game was things we've seen throughout the season just compound on each other. I mean, the missed opportunities, lack of an extra playmaker or two or three or four offensively. And so that'll be my second. Will, it wasn't won and lost in that last play.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's true. What you're hitting at, it was not one and lost in the last play, and I think people are fixating on the shotgun decision to go into shotgun on 4th and inches. And I don't think that necessarily is the problem. I think that's a symptom of the problem, which I gave the caveat of the hamstrung staff and how hamstrung Joey Lynch is by the talent of the skill position guys, by the offensive line, by a young and ever-changing quarterback situation. That is all given in key point number 1. So key point number 2 is going to be Joey Lynch has truly been horrific. And that is what I mean by that's just one example. The other example is going to be early in the game after the Will Shepherd OPI that was called. They took a vertical shot to Will Shepherd, threw it on the outside on an outside shoulder fade. Shepherd caught it, got an awful offensive pass interference call against him. I mean, it was bad. I'm not going to harp on referees, but it was bad. 1st and 25 from about midfield. Let me find my tweet that's not, that I just had pulled up.
No matter what other team that is, it's not called.
It's just awful. Just terrible. That's truly a Vanderbilt's not allowed to have good players call by the SEC officials. That's the call that is, this Vanderbilt player is physically dominant over this other SEC team.
This shouldn't happen. Yeah.
But they complete that 20-yard pass, get the bad call, and then the play calling from 1st and 25 after completing the pass. It didn't get picked and called back. It was run, screen, draw. You never go vertical again. And you have to punt. That's an example, as well as the last play of the game that ended the game, is the rigidity of play calling. Not adapting to situations ever since he has been here. Not adapting to players or personnel. They ran Mike Wright 1 carry for 2 yards, and he played a whole second half. A whole second half with your running quarterback, who was also put in another situation in the red zone, only to not have his legs utilized 1 time and attempt to throw a fade route into the corner of the end zone. Just that makes no sense. This is an echo chamber right now within that offensive play calling room. You've seen the play calling get worse and more predictable as this season has gone on. And the 4th down, I get the argument, and they will go into typically you go 2 ways. It's the number one, the coaching staff just acts like it doesn't make any sense that they decided to line up in shotgun. Or number 2, they say something like, we just didn't feel comfortable going under center. We don't do that. We don't practice that. So we're not just going to do it in the middle of the game. To the second point, because I really hope to God they're not going to go with the just ignore it, which I think is what they're going to do. You can't come out and publicly criticize, so it's just going to go on. The other side is you should have that in your playbook. A quarterback sneak since the 1999 season, I think, has like an 85% or 89. I think it's 89% success rate for inside of 4th and 2 versus every other play inside of 4th and 2 is 62%. There's a reason for those numbers. You want to talk about fucking analytics and data and all that, but the new generation of head coaches doesn't just look at the analytics and data. They try to be smart and overanalyze it. You are a middle school gym coach that is lucked into this by committing a lot of time and energy to football. Just understand that and just make the sensible call. Vanderbilt picks up that 1st down, and then we see what happens. We don't know if Vanderbilt's going to tie it. We don't know if they're going to win it. I know they would have picked up that 1st down, and handing the ball off to Ray Davis, we all knew what was going to happen against those 2 beastly Missouri defensive tackles that, just like the rest of the game, I think it was 15 carries for like 28 yards that they were going to get stuffed. So there has to be a change. Something has to happen with the play calling. It's awful. So that is my key number 2. Gave the caveat of being hamstrung, but it's still awful.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I mean, you're not getting push at all in that whole game, and you go from the shotgun and decrease 6 yards, drop back, hand it to Ray. I initially I didn't know. I mean, we couldn't even see Ray for like a full 30 seconds. I mean, he was on the ground the whole time, it felt. But yeah, well, I'm with you there. Number 3 for me, I'm gonna go positive. I mean, I got to put one positive in here. We usually like to do that because I mean, as ugly as it was, and as much of a Vanderbilt loss as it was, there were positives in this game to take. Vanderbilt easily covered, uh, so that's out there. And Vandy didn't play good football. Let's face it, they did not play good football, and you lost by 3 on the road in the SEC. So that tells you, I think that's a good sign moving forward because say you play good football, say you play a clean game, I think you beat Mizzou and Mizzou plays somewhat good football. I think there's an argument for Vanderbilt, beating Mizzou in that case, but we'll see. I think down the road, is Vanderbilt able to put 4 quarters together against an SEC team? Well, the defense played great in the second half. Clark Lee after the game, I loved this quote from him. It's from Robbie Weinstein's piece. He said, "I challenged the defense at halftime. It was 17-0. We had a 10-point swing there at the end of the first half. It was a disappointing moment for our program at half, but I challenged our defense to keep it to 17 and the offense to keep battling and to stay in the fight." And that's what they did. They did exactly that. Will, this team has that type of grit, at least defensively, that will lead, I think can lead to victories in the SEC, but the margin is so small on the other side of the ball that it just hasn't come together. And the grit that embodies their head coach. I mean, that is Clark Lee. What an effort by the defense to battle back, keep fighting, never quit, and just stay in the ball game. That's Clark Lee. That's Anthony Orji. That's CJ Taylor. That's Jalen Mahoney. Talk about the dogs on that defense. Well, they showed up in the second half. And that's what both of us expected to see in this game for whatever reason. We just did. It felt that way in this game. This was Vanderbilt's opportunity against a Mizzou offense that was putrid. The defense, I thought, matured. They grew up a little bit on Saturday. And as weird as it is to say after as bad of a loss that was, I thought the program to an extent grew up in the second half. And obviously you don't get the win, but they easily could have mailed it in and lost by 30 in this game. I really do believe that. Now, maybe Mizzou's offense doesn't even get to 30, but I still think in that Vanderbilt could have been shut out if they really tried to. Clark Lee didn't let that happen, and the leaders on defense stepped up. Yes, playing Mizzou's offense certainly helped. Obviously, probably the second worst offense in the league behind Vanderbilt right now, at least. But we hadn't seen this defense play like that in a long, long time. I mean, really since NIU in the second half, maybe Ole Miss in that first half. But I mean, Anthony Orji forced 3 turnovers. The dude's a freak. CJ Taylor returned a fumble for a touchdown with one of the most freakish plays I've ever seen. I mean,
that was number one Sports Center top 10 too.
Yeah, so. I mean, it went viral. Every Twitter account was tweeting about it. I think it's sure. I mean, that thing's up to nearly 1 million views on Twitter now. It's got to be. I mean, that was the most viral play of the weekend. So, Will, I think we're realizing this team has some dogs on defense. I think we knew that. But I think this team might be creating a new identity. We thought their identity was an improved offense, maybe a power running game. No, you get an SEC play. That's simply not what this team is. That's not what they're going to be. I think we saw that this defense, especially in the future down the road, wait till Clark gets some more players in here. I mean, my goodness, that excites you. I mean, Jalen Mahoney played well. Devin Lee had 2 sacks. So I think Vanderbilt might be forming a new identity defensively. I know they lost the game, and it's hard to point to any identity right now. But defensively, they grew up. I thought, they matured, and also on the positive side, how about Gamarion Carter? I mean, came out of absolutely nowhere with that 80-yard touchdown. Before the play, I said, throw it out wide to the right side to either of those guys. Mizzou had like 30 yards of cushion for some reason on those guys. Mike Wright, smart enough to get it out there, and Gamarion I think he surprised the whole stadium with that. I mean, I was like, holy crap. So Gamarion Carter, another positive, Will. So those are my positives that I took out of it. Another positive I think I can go with was a few throws by AJ there early. I mean, that throw to evade pressure and get it out to Quincy Skinner was unbelievable. I mean, so you saw a few bright spots from AJ, but for the most part, it was bad. It was the freshman performance that we feared. And of course, it comes at the worst possible time on the road against Missouri. but he'll come back. Well, he'll be better, and I expect him to play better against South Carolina. But the positives are there. They just didn't come all together. Like you said, well, we've talked about the pieces of the puzzle. This puzzle isn't even close to coming together to get an SEC win. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But I do think you saw some moments there defensively. And I mean, that defense, well, that's the best they've played under Clarkley, I think, in these last 2 years, his first 2 years at Vanderbilt. So Vanderbilt easily covered. That's a positive. And the defense, stepped up. So those are my positives, Will, after this game.
My key number 3, because I got out a lot of my negativity, or almost all of it, in key number 2, is also going to be kind of, I won't even say positive. I'll just say a reality check for Vanderbilt fans. Just because of how the schedule is set up, and it's 8 straight SEC games after starting out with 4 out of conference. Vanderbilt Vegas-wise won't be favored within 2 scores, 2 touchdowns of any opponent after their first 4 games. So this odd expectation that because Vanderbilt likely is going to end the season on 8 straight losses, that doesn't change the fact that this season, even right now, losing out, I would say probably a C. Probably just, depending on how the rest of it goes, they exceeded or at least hit our expectations to be an average season. They beat Vegas's win total expectation. So I think there's this weird skew. We keep hitting on it, and I feel like I keep repeating myself on it, but you keep seeing the same stuff and the same idiots on Twitter. This is year 2, really year 1 of the largest attempted rebuild in the history of Power 5 football. There is, and I will go down swinging. I will go down dying on this hill. Derrick Mason left the least talented Power 5 roster with all the transfers out and just actual number of available players. This isn't a shot at the guys that stayed. This is just like they didn't even have enough scholarship players at the end of the season due to COVID because guys were transferring out and saw the writing on the wall. Clarkley is trying to take the equivalent of a below average Ohio Valley Conference team. Let's say it's the equivalent of taking Tennessee Tech's roster right now, joining the SEC, and then in year 2, fans looking and saying, why aren't you winning? And he just wants to grab all of you that are saying this by the collar and say, I have 1 class of recruits in here right now, and they're 18 years old. Like, I don't know where it's gotten in people's minds, maybe because you've seen it at Tennessee with Heupel in 3 years. But that's a lot to do with the fact of where they were when he got there. They were a bowl team when he got there. They were competing to go to bowl games. Vanderbilt literally had 0 wins. So you're starting at such a level in the basement of not just worst in Power 5, but like bottom 5 in the country, every team. So they have improved dramatically. The announcers said it. The announcers were really like encapsulated in the wind. They just kept talking about how windy it was. So you said you could hear it. I was like, it better be really windy because they didn't give a single update on AJ Swann in that second half, but I knew it was windy. But this expectation, it's right now, it's just like a moral victory time. I mean, it is. I hate moral victories as much as everyone, but you don't go from what happened last season and the season before and the season before, and just in one season with a new coach, in one full off season, in one true offseason for this team, you're not going to suddenly be competing week in, week out with the best conference in the entire country in college football. So it's just this overall frustration of everyone expecting instantaneous results when that's simply not possible. I mean, you could put Nick Saban in that situation. There's no way that year 1 to year 2, even if he was Nick Saban recruiting in the offseason, he would still only have a bunch of freshmen there. And that would be the weird part, is like you still have to give him time. Even if he is the guy, if he's not the guy, if it's able to work, if it doesn't, you have to give him from where he started 4 years. I mean, he has to have 4 years, and then that 5th year is hot seat year, I think, or maybe not hot seat, but warm seat.
Yeah,
I think, because that would be a full cycle of recruits. So I'm still being patient. That being said, once I flip over to not being patient, I hope we'll still be doing this podcast, Billy. We'll see. But once I switch over to that, because of how patient I am right now and defending the growth and how long it's taking, and being not even defending, just understanding realistically where they were at. Once that changes over to saying, okay, we're in year 4, it's time to see some results. I'm going to be very harsh on the other side because I will have given the time and given the ability to grow and build, because I am seeing improvement. It's tangible. You can see it on the scoreboard. You can see it just in the ability for some of these guys to get open, or individual plays like Gamarion Carter. That is what you want to see. That was what teams do to Vanderbilt all the time, is a guy catches a little 6-yard curl, finds one seam, and not a single player on the defense can catch up with him. It was nice to see that on the Vanderbilt beneficiary side this time. So I definitely, I understand the frustrations. I am very frustrated. I know you are very frustrated, Billy, but they still have already hit their Vegas over on the wins. Mm-hmm. It's just give Clark time to build. The time will come to be hypercritical of wins and losses, right, but that time is not this season.
Yeah, I mean, we both agreed on that before this season. We're still not judging Clark Lee on wins and losses. I mean, that's what we said. And well, I think some fans forget that Vandy is rebuilding. They are Clark Lee is rebuilding.
You rarely see someone, I mean, a coach say that. He said it in the post-game presser. He said they were rebuilding. I mean, they are. It's the players know it. They have.
Yeah, I mean, you're rebuilding in the SEC. In the SEC East, where you've got Georgia, Tennessee, Florida. I mean, you've got to play those teams, and you had to play Alabama. You had to play Wake Forest. So, I mean, yeah, you go down the line. So, Clark Lee said it. He said, "This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like." Clark, I love that quote from him after the game. He said, "We've got to keep swinging," and he said, "We're on track," because they are on track.
You brought it up, the keep swinging. That was what popped up the Ivan Drago quote. I think I was watching that presser and then reading the transcript, and I was like, I have to. It just popped in my head immediately. So
I mean, the personal touch continues with Clark Lee even after a loss. I mean, he has a way. It's like Mike Vrabel sometimes. I mean, he's not the most pleasant after games, but Clark Lee, they just kind of find ways to kind of recenter. At least most fans, I think both of us are somewhat recentered after that game, maybe slowly but surely. But no, well, with all that said, Vandy ends up losing 17-14. I want to hit on real quick, just kind of broad points of, all right, in these next 2 weeks, what can Vanderbilt do to prepare to beat South Carolina? Maybe this is all for nothing, and South Carolina comes out and beats Vanderbilt by 2 touchdowns. I don't think that happens. With the 2 weeks to prepare for a home game, a home night game against South Carolina, a beatable SEC East opponent, even though they look better, I still think the South Carolina game is a better opportunity on paper, just because, I mean, you saw what they did coming out of a bye week before Ole Miss, and Ole Miss is a top 15 team right now. So SC plays at Mizzou at home this week. So Vandy's going to have a perfect barometer on film. I mean, you just played Mizzou. Now South Carolina plays Mizzou. So, well, I mean, obviously, I think for me, figure it out offensively. That's obviously easier said than done. Offensively, where do you go? Maybe you go to Gamarion Carter. Maybe you run that same play a couple more times. Maybe you figure some things out offensively with the offensive line, scheme wise, and maybe different blocking schemes. But obviously, find ways to create big plays. And we haven't really seen a whole lot of trick plays. I think we saw them against Ole Miss that didn't necessarily pan out. Maybe we see some more heading into South Carolina. But Will, obviously getting AJ healthy, I would point to. That's fairly important. And then defensively, play like you did in that second half. I mean, my goodness, that defense. I know you're playing Mizzou's offense, but against anybody to play that well. So, well, I would say keep it rolling defensively. Offensively, it's so tough to even put something tangible out there to say here's what they need to do, because it was so bad on Saturday. But I think you're right in finding other playmakers other than Will Sheppard, because I mean, he got decked. He's out there. He's banged up too. Maybe find Gamarion Carter a couple more times. I didn't see a whole lot of Jane McGowan on Saturday. So I think you've got the guys But I do think it is up to Joey Lynch to say, hey, how can we squeeze as much out of this offense, even if it's, you know, even if it's not much at all? How do we squeeze out something out of this offense? That's going to be the challenge, Will.
I mean, the thing to watch is just you've got to find somebody that it's not really about Vanderbilt thinking they have the guys. Opponents just don't fear Vanderbilt's guys other than Will Sheppard. I mean, Missouri, a lot of that game was playing 10 guys within 6 yards of the line of scrimmage, and with one safety on the side of the field Will Sheppard was on. And everyone else was single coverage the entire game. And they couldn't get open. McGowan, Skinner, Gamarion Carter. It's not on Lynch. It's just these guys winning one-on-one matchups. And this is the big part. Every guy I just named, Gamarion Carter, sophomore. Jaden McGowan, freshman. Quincy Skinner Jr., sophomore. When have you seen Will Sheppard this season take the biggest jump from his sophomore to his junior season? When do we talk about when Kyle Shermer took his big jump? And when those skill position guys, Kalijah Lipscomb, Jared Pinkney, Vaughn took their big jump going into their junior season. So this year, it's just getting them the reps and experience. And really, I don't know how you scheme them open. You just have to keep taking shots. You have to, even if you don't have faith in it truly, you have to, because you have to keep the opponents honest, because right now, it's just going to get worse and worse. It's going to become a parody of itself, how exaggerated these coverages are going to be on Will Sheppard's side of the field until someone beats them vertically. I say all that because Gamarion Carter's play was great, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change how defenses are going to scheme against Vanderbilt. That was a missed tackle and then some good down the field. But it's just, you've got to go. If that play was a 40-yard pass over his shoulder, I would be like, that's what you have to have, because now defenses and safeties in the back of their minds are going to be like, okay, so they have two guys that can actually beat a corner on any type of vertical route. So that is what I'm looking for the rest of the season. The spot's there. They need it. Joey Lynch knows they need it. Clark Lee knows they need it. Every player does. So seeing somebody step up this season, not really because what it will do this year, but because next season and going into that, that's when I expect the offense to take a big step forward. The defense's potential next season, I mean, you're losing quite a few talented guys, your two best tacklers. I think Mahoney's gone after this year, unless I'm incorrect. He was a Mason recruit.
Yeah.
I know Orgy will be gone to the draft, but the defense is losing its best player, at least in Orgy. But I think it will still improve with a continuously increasing level of talent. The offense should take a large jump next year. That this should be the time you have a year of experience with kind of the same nucleus. But it all comes down to that quarterback position. You said, what do they need to do? I think utilizing Mike Wright, if you have to play him or are wanting to play him, he needs to be running the ball. I don't understand why he played as many snaps as he did and had one carry for 2 yards in the box score. That doesn't make any sense to me. You didn't see designed runs. I understand that maybe you don't want to get him hurt because your other option, oh no, wait, is a pretty experienced quarterback in Ken Seals. I think we saw him start an entire season as a freshman. So I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if it's just Joey Lynch pissing his pants because he had a quarterback change and didn't have alternative game plans or can't call on the fly. This is one of the most illogical games just overall. I didn't go back and watch it. We talked about it before. I usually go back and watch the games, even in losses. This one was too painful. I couldn't do it. It was going to put me in an awful mood, and I would be even more negative than usual. But from watching it and the notes I took, the disconnect between you're trying to run an AJ Swann game plan with Mike Wright in at quarterback and not adjusting to that on the fly, it just didn't make any sense to me. And actually, Billy, it's funny. I was Mr. Positivity, it felt like, on Twitter compared to other people.
Yeah,
other people with Chicken Little running around. The sky is falling. Bench AJ Swann, fire Clark Lee. That's what it felt like.
The best / worst was bench AJ Swann. I mean, are we serious with that? Like,
I thought people were saying it tongue in cheek. I thought it was like facetious, but they were serious. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I saw that, and that blew my mind. I mean, that was the most mind-boggling thing after that game. But Well, nonetheless, Vandy has another bye coming up. So yet another bye week coming up. I think that's a good thing, obviously, for Vanderbilt. But 2 weeks before South Carolina on Saturday, it's a night game at First Bank Stadium. So, Will, I know you got to get one more thing in here.
I've got to give him the shout out. I thought Devin Lee in
Yeah.
general this season, I don't think he's
Yeah.
been getting talked about enough.
He's made a jump.
Orgy's been getting talked about for good reason. And Mahoney doesn't get talked about enough. He has played incredibly well switching over that safety position and tackling. I wanted to point out some individual guys on defense. Devin Lee has been playing well. Orgy gets plenty of due. CJ Taylor.
Oh my gosh.
But Devin Lee specifically has stuck out as far as disrupting plays consistently. Elijah McAllister had a couple good hits and plays. Derrick Wright. I feel like there's just like Orgy, then it's like the defense, and Orgy and Mahoney for everyone. This is me too. I get caught up in doing it because they do make so many plays, but those defensive tackles and interior defensive linemen don't get a lot of love. So I wanted to shout out Devin Lee, even though he actually did, I think, have like the 4th or 5th most tackles on the team. And I think he technically had a forced fumble. I don't know if they gave it to him or Orgy, but they kind of simultaneously hit the ball carrier while Orgy ripped the ball out. But Devin Lee has been pretty awesome in that spot. He's a sophomore, and that's a spot that Vanderbilt desperately needs. I mean, you haven't seen a guy on the interior kind of Nephi Lillau, but really since Adam Butler, since you've had one of those solid defensive tackles. And in this 3-4 defense, if you can find one of those, that is an absolute game changer on Barkley's scheme.
And Devin Lee, if he's turning out to be a steal in that recruiting class.
It's weird. He has a baby face. It's very he has the body of like an NFL defensive tackle, like a 32-year-old NFL defensive tackle. He's built, but he takes off his helmet and he looks 17. Like it's I don't know what it is, but it kind of shocks me every time because he's a monster and he plays like a monster.
Yeah.
But he's got the baby face. So maybe if he can grow out a beard, I would recommend that. Add an intimidation factor to your already phenomenal play, Devin. That's my suggestion here at the end of TDR.
I love it. It's like Linus Zunk and Darren Agu. I mean, they're like freaks, but they have baby faces, so it's kind of confusing. But that'll do it for a somewhat quick TDR episode 186. South Carolina coming up for Vandy in a couple weeks. Of course, we will preview that. We might have a week off, Will. How about that? It is episode 187 of the Door Report, powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors.